The discovery the silence between galaxies was supposed to be absolute. Commander Thale of the Synthesis knew this fundamental truth as his crystalline form pulsed with concern. His ship drifted through the vast emptiness at the galaxy's edge, where stars became sparse and cold ruled everything. The Synthesis represented the combined efforts of 12 species, each contributing their unique abilities to explore the boundaries of known space. Yet nothing in their collective knowledge prepared them for what they were about to discover. Thale's navigator, a being called Erix whose body consisted of interconnected light filaments, detected the impossible. Energy signatures pulsed from a region where no star existed for light years in any direction. The readings made no sense according to every law of physics the galactic community understood. Life required energy, warmth, and resources. This region offered none of these things, yet something was definitely there. The science officer, Malera of the Zephons, extended her telepathic consciousness toward the anomaly. Her species could sense life across vast distances, feeling the electric pulse of thoughts and emotions. What she encountered made her physical form shudder. There were minds out there, thousands of them, existing in conditions that should have killed any known form of life within hours. These minds burned with determination so fierce it felt like touching a star's core. As the Synthesis moved closer, the ship's sensors revealed something that challenged everything they believed possible. A massive vessel, crude by galactic standards, tumbled slowly through the void. Its hull showed patches of different metals, clearly salvaged and welded together over time. Solar panels extended from its surface like desperate fingers, grasping for the faint light of distant stars. The ship leaked atmosphere from a dozen small breaches, yet somehow maintained pressure. It should have been a tomb drifting through space, but life signs filled every corridor. Thale ordered his crew to establish contact. The communications officer, a liquid-form Aquarian named Drell, sent standard greeting protocols in mathematical sequences. The response came immediately, not in mathematics but in crude radio waves carrying audio signals. A voice spoke in an unknown language, though the universal translator quickly adapted. The words that came through changed everything. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the colony ship New Horizon. We've been waiting for someone to find us for 300 years. Thank God you're here. 300 years. Thale's crystalline form flickered with disbelief. No species could survive that long in such conditions. The ship they observed had technology centuries behind even the most primitive civilizations in the galaxy. Yet these beings, these humans as they called themselves, had somehow endured in the cosmic desert where death was the only certainty. The boarding party consisted of Thale, Malara, and Korvac, a heavily armored sentinel whose species served as protectors. They expected to find desperate, dying creatures barely clinging to existence. Instead, they encountered something that defied comprehension. The humans had transformed their failing ship into a functioning ecosystem. Plants grew in improvised chambers lit by LED strips. Water recycled through systems held together with adhesive tape and determination. Children played in corridors while adults worked on repairs using tools they had fabricated from scrap metal. Captain Chen met them at the airlock. She was smaller than any of them, her body fragile by galactic standards. Her skin showed signs of radiation exposure, and her eyes carried the weight of generations of struggle. Yet she stood straight and smiled, extending her hand in what they learned was a greeting gesture. Her grip was firm despite everything her people had endured. She led them through the ship, explaining their story as they walked. Earth had sent them out 500 years ago with the best technology humanity could manage. They were meant to establish a colony on a distant world, but navigation failures had sent them off course. By the time they realized their mistake, they were too far from any star to turn back. The journey that should have taken 50 years had stretched into centuries of drifting through the void. Malara telepathically shared her amazement with Thale. These humans possessed no psychic abilities, no advanced biotechnology, no energy manipulation capabilities. They survived through pure mechanical ingenuity and social cooperation. When systems failed, they rebuilt them. When food ran low, they found ways to grow more with less. When despair threatened to consume them, they told stories and sang songs to keep hope alive. The ship's life support systems operated at 12% efficiency. By every calculation the Synthesis's computers could run, the humans should have died centuries ago. Yet here they were, not just surviving, but somehow thriving. Children learned mathematics in classrooms made from cargo containers. Engineers trained apprentices using knowledge passed down through generations. Scientists conducted experiments with equipment held together by faith and wire. Korvac examined their defensive preparations with professional interest. The humans had no energy weapons, no shields, no advanced alloys. They had modified mining equipment into crude projectile weapons and reinforced critical sections with layers of scavenged metal. It was primitive, yet the warrior recognized something profound in their preparations. These beings would fight the universe itself for their survival. What disturbed Thala most was their acceptance of mortality coupled with absolute refusal to surrender. Every human knew they might die tomorrow if another system failed. They lived with death as a constant companion, yet they planned for generations they might never see. They documented everything, leaving instructions for repairs that might be needed decades after the writer had died. They raised children who would never see Earth, teaching them about a home that existed only in stories and corrupted data files. The humans had developed their own solutions to problems that stumped galactic civilizations. Without advanced medical technology, they had learned to use their ship's limited resources to treat injuries and illness through careful observation and experimentation. Without sophisticated recycling systems, they had created biological loops where waste from one process became resources for another. Without faster-than-light communication, they had maintained social cohesion through shared rituals and collective decision-making. Captain Chen showed them the ship's most precious chamber, a room they called the Archive. Here they had preserved everything they could remember about Earth. Books transcribed from memory when digital systems failed. Songs taught to children who would teach them to their own children. Recipes for foods they could no longer make but refused to forget. Paintings created with pigments extracted from waste products, depicting landscapes none of them had ever seen. The examination of their power systems revealed the impossible. The humans were generating energy from cosmic radiation, using collectors they had built from communications equipment. They were harvesting hydrogen molecules from the near vacuum of space with nets made from recycled air filters. They were running life support on power levels that wouldn't maintain emergency lighting on a synthesis shuttle. Every joule of energy was accounted for, used, reused, and somehow stretched beyond its theoretical limits. Urich studied their navigation records with growing alarm. The humans had been using dead reckoning and observations of distant galaxies to maintain their course. Without proper sensors, they had developed a navigation system based on the subtle gravitational influences they could detect with improvised equipment. They had been flying blind through the cosmos, guided only by mathematics and hope. The social structure aboard the New Horizon defied galactic norms. There was no strict hierarchy, no genetic optimization, no neural linking. Humans governed themselves through consensus and adapted their society to meet changing needs. When resources were scarce, they shared equally. When decisions needed to be made, they talked until agreement was reached. When conflicts arose, they were resolved through discussion rather than authority. Malara found herself studying their children with particular interest. These young humans had never known anything but the ship, yet they dreamed of worlds they had never seen. They drew pictures of oceans that existed only in stories. They played games that simulated experiences none of them had ever had. They were preparing for a future they might never see, learning skills for a colony that might never be established. The humans had developed their own technological innovations, born from necessity. They had created new alloys from metals they could salvage. They had developed closed-loop ecosystems that sustained themselves with minimal input. They had invented medical procedures using equipment never meant for such purposes. Nothing was advanced by galactic standards, yet everything was ingenious in its simplicity and effectiveness. The Revelation Commander Thale convened an emergency meeting aboard the Synthesis, while the human ship underwent initial repairs with their assistance. The 12 species represented in his crew had seen civilizations rise and fall across the galaxy, but none had witnessed anything like humanity's survival. The implications of what they had discovered sent ripples through their collective understanding of what was possible. Malara presented her psychological analysis first. The humans possessed something no other species had documented: anti-fragility of spirit. They didn't just endure hardship, they grew stronger from it. Each crisis that should have destroyed them had instead forced them to evolve new solutions. Their children were being raised not to avoid problems, but to embrace them as opportunities for innovation. This philosophy was encoded not in their genes but in their culture, passed down through stories and examples. The engineering review conducted by the synthesis's technical team revealed even more disturbing facts. Every piece of human technology was operating beyond its theoretical maximum efficiency, not through advanced science but through countless small optimizations discovered through trial and error over centuries. They had learned to feel vibrations that indicated system failures days before they occurred. They could taste subtle changes in recycled air that warned of filter problems. They had become living sensors. Their bodies adapted to their ship in ways that no genetic engineering could replicate. Erix's analysis of their trajectory revealed the full scope of human determination. The New Horizon had been traveling toward a star system that their original calculations suggested might have habitable planets. Even knowing they were off course, even understanding that generations would pass before arrival, they had maintained their heading. They were flying toward a hope so distant it had become faith, yet they flew nonetheless. The communication with Galactic Central Command created unprecedented chaos. The hegemony of worlds had built its entire philosophy on the principle that advancement required certain conditions: abundant energy, stable environments, and systematic progression through technological stages. Humanity had violated every one of these requirements. They had achieved the impossible through sheer refusal to accept impossibility. The High Council demanded immediate verification. Ships from every major civilization rushed toward the galaxy's edge, each species sending their best scientists to study this anomaly called humanity. What they found challenged their fundamental understanding of life itself. The humans welcomed each visitor with the same exhausted warmth, sharing their knowledge freely despite having nothing to gain from it. The Valtari, masters of biological enhancement, studied human genetics with confusion. These beings had evolved on a single planet without conscious direction, yet they possessed adaptability that surpassed centuries of directed evolution. Their immune systems learned and remembered. Their muscles grew stronger under stress. Their minds could hold multiple conflicting ideas simultaneously and somehow find synthesis. They were chaos given form, yet somehow functional. The Crix Collective, a machine intelligence that had achieved perfection through unified thought, could not comprehend human decision-making. Each human acted independently, often in contradiction to others, yet somehow their society functioned. They argued constantly but worked together. They competed against each other while supporting the whole. They were individuals who had chosen to become a community, not through programming but through something they called love. The impact on galactic philosophy was immediate and devastating. Entire schools of thought crumbled as humanity's existence proved them false. The doctrine of optimal conditions, which stated that life required specific parameters to develop, was abandoned overnight. The theory of directed advancement, which claimed intelligence needed guidance to progress, became obsolete. The synthesis model, which predicted that all successful species would eventually merge into collective consciousness, was revealed as merely one path among many. Religious movements across the galaxy struggled to incorporate humanity into their worldviews. Some declared humans to be divine messengers, sent to teach the galaxy about resilience. Others saw them as proof that the universe itself was conscious, placing this impossible species at the galaxy's edge as a test or lesson. The humans themselves seemed amused by such theories, insisting they were simply people trying to survive. The technological exchange that followed transformed both parties. The galaxy's advanced civilizations provided humans with technologies that seemed like magic: faster than light communication, energy generation from quantum fluctuations, medical nanobots that could repair cellular damage. In return, humanity offered something unexpected: perspective. They taught efficient resource management to species that had forgotten scarcity. They demonstrated creative problem-solving to civilizations that had become dependent on established solutions. They showed that advancement wasn't always about having better tools, but about using available tools better. The human colony ship became a pilgrimage site for scientists and philosophers. Each species found different lessons in humanity's survival. The warrior sentinels learned that true strength came not from weapons, but from will. The logical Velma discovered that rationality without emotion was incomplete. The collective Morvax realized that unity could exist without uniformity. Captain Chen became an unwitting celebrity, her words studied and analyzed across the galaxy. When asked how humanity had survived the impossible, she would shrug and say they hadn't known it was impossible, so they just kept trying. This simple statement caused more philosophical debates than any treaty or scientific discovery in recorded history. The rescue operation for the New Horizon became a galactic effort. Every species contributed something. New hull materials that could self-repair, gardens that could produce food with minimal light, medical systems that could adapt to human physiology. The humans accepted these gifts with gratitude, but also with conditions. They wanted to learn how everything worked, to understand rather than simply use. They insisted on training their own people to maintain and replicate the technologies. As the New Horizon was refitted for the journey to their original destination, now achievable with faster-than-light technology, humanity made an announcement that shocked the galaxy. They would not abandon their old ship. Instead, they would maintain it as a museum, a reminder of what they had endured and overcome. Some humans would continue the journey in the original vessel, taking the slow path to the stars as their ancestors had planned. This decision created a philosophical crisis among species that had always chosen efficiency over sentiment. Why would anyone choose hardship when comfort was available? The humans explained it in terms that took years for other species to truly understand. The journey had become part of who they were. To abandon it would be to abandon part of themselves. The influence of humanity spread throughout the galaxy in unexpected ways. Species that had stagnated for millennia began experimenting again. Civilizations that had become dependent on their technologies started learning manual alternatives. The phrase human engineering entered the galactic lexicon, meaning any solution that was crude but effective, simple but ingenious. The transformation was not without resistance. Some species viewed humanity as a dangerous influence, a chaos that could destabilize the careful order of galactic civilization. They pointed out that human approaches led to failure as often as success, that their trial-and-error methodology was wasteful and dangerous. These critics were not entirely wrong, but they missed the essential point. Humanity had proven that failure was not final, that there was always another way forward. Educational systems across the galaxy began incorporating human history and philosophy. The story of the New Horizon became required study for engineering students, not for its technical specifications, but for its lesson about persistence. Human literature, preserved in the ship's archives, spread throughout civilizations that had forgotten the power of fiction to convey truth. The galaxy had spent millions of years believing that advancement meant leaving struggle behind, that evolution meant transcending physical limitations, that progress meant achieving perfection. Humanity revealed a different path: advancement through adversity, evolution through adaptation, progress through perseverance. They had not transcended their limitations but had learned to dance with them. As the New Horizon finally approached its destination, now accompanied by ships from every major civilization, Captain Chen stood on the same bridge where her great-grandmother had stood centuries before. The colony they would establish would be unlike anything the galaxy had seen, a fusion of human ingenuity and alien technology, of desperate creativity and abundant resources, of impossible dreams and practical reality. The revelation that turned the heavens to ash was not that humanity had survived the impossible. It was that impossibility itself was a construct, a limitation that existed only in the mind. The ordered constellation of galactic civilization had been built on foundations of assumption and theory. Humanity had ignored these foundations and built something new from necessity and hope. The stars at the galaxy's edge no longer seemed cold and empty. They had become a testament to what life could achieve when it refused to accept its limitations. The humans had not conquered the void through strength or technology, but through something far more powerful: the simple refusal to give up. This revelation spread through the galaxy like fire through dry wood, burning away old certainties and leaving fertile ground for new growth. The legacy of humanity's discovery would reshape galactic civilization for millennia to come. Species that had believed themselves superior learned humility. Civilizations that had stopped growing found new inspiration. The galaxy itself seemed to pulse with renewed purpose, as if the universe had been waiting for someone to prove that its rules were meant to be broken. In the end, the greatest revelation was not about humanity, but about life itself. It was infinitely more adaptable, more creative, and more persistent than anyone had imagined. The humans at the galaxy's edge had not just survived. They had shown every species what survival really meant, and in that showing, they had turned the cold equations of the cosmos into something warm and wonderfully alive.